I never thought something as simple as a knock on the door could change my life forever. It was a morning like any other, or so I thought. The weight of what had happened lingered in the back of my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to understand it. I had no idea how everything would unfold that day. I opened the door to find her father standing there, his presence both familiar and strange. Calmly, he asked how I was doing, his concern genuine. But that wasn't what made my heart skip a beat. What struck me was the fact that he wasn't angry. He wasn't here to yell, to point fingers, or even to demand answers. He was here to find his daughter. He walked past me and disappeared into my apartment. That moment, though quiet, felt like the calm before a storm. A few minutes later, G stepped out. And that's when everything went black. I'd been standing at the door, trying to hold it together when G spoke to me. The weight of the conversation hit me like a wave. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The world faded away and I passed out. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed. 3 months had passed since that fateful night. The damage, both emotional and physical, was still too raw. But one thing kept me going, G. He stayed with me in those early weeks when I felt like I might lose control again. G didn't just sit by. He was there every step of the way, making sure I didn't fall into the darkness I'd been so close to. During that time, I did what I thought would help me heal. I cut ties with my ex-fiancée. I changed my number, blocked her on every social media platform, and refused to speak to her. But still, she wouldn't let go. She showed up at my door again and again, pleading for forgiveness, apologizing for the affair she'd had. She cried, confessed that her partner's wife had found out and reported their affair to HR, leaving her jobless. She begged for a second chance, but I was done. I couldn't bring myself to listen anymore. But her persistence didn't end there. One day, after I had just about given up, her father showed up at my door again. This time, he came with a 6-pack of my favorite beer and an offer to talk. I agreed to meet him outside, not wanting to risk another encounter with her. We walked and talked. He apologized on behalf of his daughter and explained the pressure he and his wife had faced. He shared that their daughter had been spoiled and selfish, but he hoped this situation would be a wake-up call. He admitted that he wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. I listened, not sure what I expected, but also not willing to entertain any fantasies of reconciliation. When I asked if there were any issues between us, he assured me there were none. We kept walking, and he casually suggested that maybe it was time for me to get a divorce. It wasn't what I expected, but it was a moment of clarity for me. This was the turning point. After all the drama, after everything that had happened, I finally made a decision. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I wouldn't let her parents guilt trip me into speaking with her again. The past had to stay in the past. But then something happened, something I didn't see coming. She showed up again, at my door. This time, I made the decision to meet her. Not inside my apartment, but in a local park. I told her we could talk, but she had to meet me there in half an hour. It was surreal, yet I wasn't nervous. In fact, I felt composed, like I had control over the situation for the first time in months. When I arrived at the park, she was there, tears streaming down her face. She tried to pry into what her father and I had discussed, but I made it clear that it wasn't her business. As the conversation dragged on for hours, I felt a strange detachment. I wasn't angry, I wasn't upset, I was just done. Eventually, I called her dad to come pick her up. I told her I forgave her, not for us, but for me. I didn't want to carry the weight of anger and resentment any longer, but getting back together was out of the question. I told her people who truly love each other don't betray one another like that. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. She cried hysterically, and I watched. For the first time, I felt like I had detached myself from the past. And that's when it hit me. This was my moment of closure. After the park meeting, I did something for myself. I called an Uber and went to a local animal shelter. I adopted a kitten and named it Shiny. G joked that I had a shiny spine now, a symbol of my newfound strength and courage. Shiny was a constant reminder that I could stand up for myself. I had made it through the darkness, and now I was embracing the light. G continued to be my rock through all of this. He was always there for me, playing video games, sharing beers, making me laugh. It wasn't just a distraction, it was proof that I was moving forward. I wasn't the same person who had let the past control me. I had taken control back. For the first time in a long while, I was excited about the future. Yes, the past had hurt, but I was ready to leave it behind and embrace the joy and simplicity of life once again. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I was strong enough to walk it. And to you, dear listener, if you've made it this far, thank you. Your time means the world. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing. Your support helps us continue sharing more stories, more experiences, and more moments of growth and healing.